So let's open Procreate. If you are already in a project, tap on Gallery, and then let's create a new canvas. So in the top right corner, tap the plus and choose Square. First, we're going to create guidelines, and then we'll draft out our piece. I will say, if you prefer, you can download the guidelines and the sketch that I've included in the course downloads and import them to give you a starting point for this, but I do encourage you to watch me do it from scratch first so that you know how I did it and so you can create your own guidelines. But I have provided the exact guidelines I will be using just in case you prefer that. Okay, so let's create some guidelines here. Let's choose our color, and you can just go with black or really any color for this. And then let's choose the brush. So inside your brush library, find the textures set and find the one called grid. Over here on the canvas, you'll notice that if you paint with it, it gives you a grid. If you lift up your pen, it's going to not match up anymore. So when we do this, we need to keep our pen on the canvas the whole time. So I'm going to undo that. Set the size of your brush to 60%. And then for this, it helps to zoom out just so you can cover the whole thing without having to move your hand so much. So zoom out, cover the entire canvas with this grid just by pressing down and painting over it. This brush is a good way to add a 2D grid similar to what I showed you with Canvas Drawing Guide before. But we're actually going to slant these lines so that it looks more like the calligraphy grids that I was showing you earlier, because our letters will be on a slant instead of straight up and down. So to slant your grid, tap on your arrow, and this will select everything on the layer. Then we're going to use a transformation called distort. So here at the bottom, you have freeform, uniform, distort, and warp. Choose distort. And then in the top node here, we're going to drag it to the right. Now you'll notice that I'm able to drag mine perfectly to the right. If yours is going up and down at all, then you can go ahead and turn on your magnetics snapping. So let's tap on snapping down here. If I turn these off, then and I try to move this to the right, then it also kind of moves up and down, which is fine. But if you want to be able to move it directly to the right without up or down at all, then you can turn on snapping and magnetics, and that will allow you to do just that. Okay, so we want it to be at a little bit of an angle. Just so you know, in calligraphy and lettering, the more angled it is, oftentimes the more elegant it can look, and the more upright it is, oftentimes for script lettering, it looks more modern. So we just want it to be about that angle. Okay, and then before you deselect that, we're going to increase the size of this. So let's choose uniform at the bottom here. This will allow you to increase the size of your selection proportionally. So let's just take this left center node and drag it to the left to increase the size. You can also drag this one to the right. Tap on your arrow to deselect. Now, just wanted to point out, if I were to try to select that again and then move this to the right, you'll notice that anything that fell off the canvas has been cropped off. So anything that goes off the edge of your canvas, you basically lose it. So those are the guides, and I'm going to recommend naming your layers as we go. Tap on your layer, choose rename, and type guides. Okay, the next thing that we'll do is decrease the opacity just to make this a little less stark of a guideline. I could have made them in light gray, but another way is to just take your opacity by tapping on the N and dragging this down until they're light enough to see but not too dark. Let's create a new layer, and this will be the phrase that we're going to work on. So I'm going to rename this and call it phrase. Let's grab a sketching brush. So go to your sketching set in the brush library, and let's choose the one called Procreate Pencil. Okay, so you just tap on that to select it, and then over here on our phrase layer, we're going to write out the phrase. So you can feel free to do the same one that I'm doing or something else. Well begun is half done. And that is Aristotle. All right, so the point of that was just to get a sense of how long our quote is, how many words there are, get the spelling of it, and this is just for our reference. For the actual sketch, we're going to begin sketching out each word, and for a quote that's as short as this one, I like to do each word on its own layer in this step. I'll show you why, so it's easier to move things around. And I also like to name the layers with my words. So this feels a little tedious at first, but I promise it makes it a lot easier as you get going. So let's create a new layer for each word in the phrase. And for really short words like is or the or to, short, unimportant words, I usually save those for the end. So we're going to create 4 layers right now. Well, begun, half, done. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to name these by tapping on the layer name, choosing rename, and then typing all of the words in the phrase. So the top one will be well, the next one will be begun, skipping is, go to half, done. So if you have a really long quote, obviously you probably don't want to do every single word on its own layer, but anything that's less than, I don't know, 8 words is very doable to do it on its own layer.